Welcome to the Vault Archons. I am the Keeper of Keys, Kraz, and today I'm just gonna, well, just kind of talk. So, what we're gonna be looking at today is the, and I apologize again because I'm still a little bit sick. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna just kind of cruise through my decks. I don't have a lot of, not much of a destination in this video other than just kind of talking about how I feel about the game, what I think about where things might be going. How I feel about the whole unique deck concept, and honestly, you know, when I really look at the game and how I feel about it, you know, it's an unusual thing in a sense that it is the first of its kind. There haven't been any other unique deck games ever before this. So the deck you're looking at here, the one that's really kind of sitting right here, this is the first deck I ever opened. And so this deck is actually pretty special to me because of that. I've kept it. I haven't made any videos about it. I got this at a pre-release, and I've just been kind of holding on to it. Well, I've just kind of thought about what I might do, and I've just kind of decided that I'm just going to make a video with no real purpose, you know, in mind other than just kind of talking about the game. So this one right here is Domo Jack, the Linguist Swindler. I've really enjoyed this deck. And when I first opened it, I wasn't super impressed. Matter of fact, I was more impressed with my daughter's deck when I first opened this. And what I found out was over time, I actually think that this deck is, you know, comparable to my daughter's deck, maybe potentially better. Actually probably is. I've beaten her quite a few times using this deck, and I think our ability to judge these decks is still pretty limited. I've seen a lot of them, and overall, you know, our ability to really kind of understand what we see when we see these decks is just kind of limited. I don't think we understand what's going to make it into the meta. I do think that it's very likely that we're going to see Logos in the meta. There's a lot of good things in there, or at least if it's not Logos, we're going to see card draw mechanics, which exist in Mars. We're going to see Logos cards, you know, like library access, things that allow you a larger card hand. Those will definitely make it into the meta. Battle Fleet from Mars will definitely make it into the meta. And just overall, we're going to see a lot of different things go into the meta that I think I can, you know, see some of the things that will make it. Things that forge keys outside of turns will probably make it into the meta. All the cards that are really designed around stopping your opponent from forging a key, those are very likely to make it into the meta. Some are weaker than others. Overall, I think my least favorite house is probably Brobnar. Just because I think it has some of the poorest ability to control the Amber Pool, but there are combinations of Brobnar that would be better than some of my houses I like more. So there really is no house that I'm like, oh, I wouldn't play it. If the right cards appear, Brobnar can be fantastic. So all the houses can be good, and I don't think I would limit myself to saying, oh, I won't play Brobnar, oh, I won't play this. I think they all have the ability to make fantastic card selections. I just think Brobnar is the one that's the least likely to give me a card selection I like. And that's why it's my least favorite, not because I don't like some of the cards in Brobnar. I actually really like some of the cards in Brobnar. I think after that, it really is tied amongst a lot of the houses how I feel. I like Sanctum. I like a lot of the armor mechanics and stuff like that are in Sanctum. I like a lot of the cards that are in Sanctum. You know, I've really enjoyed the different things that you can see in there. I've really enjoyed Mars. Mars has some fantastic, interesting cards in here, or just in general. And this deck, as you know, I've really enjoyed. I'm not really explaining this deck right now. I'm just kind of going through it. I'm showing people the cards. I may at some future point, I'll probably do an evaluation of this deck when I'm not just rambling. I'll actually talk about, you know, how this deck plays, but it plays well. It's a good deck. It's got some very interesting features. It's very good against decks that build a large board. It can be quite a bit of fun. So I just have enjoyed most of the houses overall. I've even enjoyed decks with Brobnar. Probably my favorite houses, if I really had to pick them, would be Logos, Untamed, and probably Shadow. Although Dis is way up in there as well. I really enjoy that. And like I said, I really enjoy Sanctum. I really enjoy Mars. So really the only house that I'm not a huge fan of is Brobnar. But all the other houses I actually do enjoy. A good deck with any of those combinations would be fine with me. And a good deck with Brobnar is still fine with me. So it's not, like I said, it really just depends on card selection. I just don't like the generation of House Brobnar. And I do think they have less cards that generate well. And their cards force you into fight mechanics, so you can't use the Reap. You can't use the action abilities on these cards. I love this card right here, by the way, Mobius Scroll. This is the best archive card in the game, in my opinion. You can cycle it in and out. So on one turn, you can declare Logos, cycle this in, dump 2 cards out of your hand, pull your archive next turn with the cards that you've cycled. So your next turn was going to be, say, next turn, say you were planning on playing Sanctum. And then you can just cycle those Sanctum cards back into your hand next turn and give yourself a big hand every single turn once you have the Mobius Scroll. So this Mobius Scroll, I think, is a fantastic card. It's very, very powerful. And I've really enjoyed playing with it. And so I just, overall, I just really have kind of enjoyed the game. And I think the unique deck concept is fantastic. And I just think that they've done a good job on it. I think that it does have potential for some broken combinations. I think that can happen. I don't know if they'll remove those or if they will happen or if even they'll be a big deal when they do, because it's not like a deck building game. It's not where you can recreate that broken combination in 10 different decks. You get a deck that has a broken, that may be a potentially broken deck. If it does exist, well then it's one deck. There may be more, but that may be the only one that exists, which makes that deck exceedingly rare and very unique. So I don't know if it's really going to be a problem when it does occur. I do think that that it has a potential to be, but I don't see it. Just honestly, with all the decks I've opened and all the decks I've kind of seen, including amongst my friends, I'm just not sure that the decks that may be broken are going to be a significant issue. Just because the odds you'll ever face one is insanely rare. And if you do, you'll know it. And, you know, if you're playing with a group of friends or people you know, nobody's going to have trouble chaining, you know, their Uber deck. You know, I wouldn't. If one of my friends asked me to add chains to one of my decks before we played, I'd say, sure, okay. I think that's fair. Especially if I've beaten them every time with the, you know, said deck. You know, I'd continue adding chains to it just because I have no issue with intentionally balancing the game the way it was meant to. So I like the chains mechanic. I think the long-term viability of the game, I don't know how long the game will last, but I do. But I've asked myself the question of if Keyforge was to come to an end, you know, and I know I'm, you know, talking about this way before it's ever going to happen. But if it did, say 10, 15 years down the road, how would I feel about opening, you know, a Call of the Archons deck, you know, just cracking a pack? How would I feel about it? You know, would I be willing to pay $10 for it? Would I be willing to pay $20 for it? You know, how would I feel about it come that time, you know, if I had the opportunity to crack a fresh pack way down the road, even if the game was gone, because of the way that I felt about the game, opening these packs, getting to see the game, getting to understand its concepts, how it works, what it is, I think in the future, there's definitely going to be a point where, yeah, opening one of these oldest packs is going to be a really enjoyable experience. And it's not going to be like, it's not going to be the same kind of experience as, say, cracking an alpha booster for Magic the Gathering, where people are praying that they get something good. I think it's going to be different than that. I think it's going to be, no matter what you open, it is going to be unique. It is one of a kind. It is its only deck like it. Now, there may be some similarities to other decks, and you'll probably be hoping for a powerful Call of the Archons deck when you do it. But it'll still, the whole deck itself will still be very cool to have. All of these decks, I think, are going to be, relatively cool to have over the long run. I don't know how many of these are going to be out there. I don't know how big this print run will be. I have a feeling it's not going to be a gigantic print run. And I have a feeling the game's popularity is going to grow. That's just my opinion. I think that knowing all the people that I've seen show interest in it has been much greater. It reminds me of the interest I saw in early games like Magic, when they drew in tremendous amounts of people from large amounts of groups of people. You didn't just have one group of people that came in. It was from across the board. And now Magic, I think, has become very limited in the people it draws in. It draws in people that are willing to put down a lot of money, generally speaking, or people that have a nostalgia for the game. Those are the people that get drawn into Magic. It doesn't really draw in a lot of new people relative to the way it used to be. And so I feel that, in the long run, games like this are going to be the ones that our children, or I should say my children, or younger people will look back at and say, I remember cracking these packs when they first came out. I don't think a lot of younger generations are going to look back at Magic with that kind of nostalgia that we do, at least the older people who did. I have a feeling it's really going to be these games. It's going to be stuff like this, where they look back and they go, wow, I remember opening a Call of the Archons deck. I remember opening, whatever. Pokemon is always going to kind of be a big thing amongst the younger children because of the art style. I don't think it matters how many cards they print in Pokemon. They could print those sets into absolute oblivion, and I don't think it would make a single bit of difference if they printed those things for, if they reprinted those cards a gazillion times. I do think it matters when you start talking about reprinting of Magic cards. And the reason I think it matters is a lot of the reason I think Magic has retained the people it's retained is people feel they have value in those cards. They have a significant investment, and they don't want to abandon that. Like people don't want to abandon games like World of Warcraft or stuff like that. They don't want to walk away from these things they have a significant investment in. And but the thing is a game like Keyforge only has a $10 initial buy-in. Now, of course, I think your initial buy-in in this is not really $10 realistically. It is $10, yes, I know. You can buy one deck, $10. Okay, got it. But I think the real buy-in is probably closer to, I don't know, $20, $30, $40. I think that's what the average person who really plays the game is going to do. They're going to buy 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 decks. They're going to get a little collection of these initial run decks. And then they're going to move on to the next set when it comes out. And they'll buy some of those. and they'll move on to the next set when it comes out, and they'll buy some of those. And as long as the power level remains relatively constant, I don't think that you'll see a huge shift away from the game. I think you'll see people come back over and over again, one set after the other, because of the relatively unique style of the game. I am trying to line these up, but not from, I can't really see the angle of the camera right now, so hopefully it's not too bad. This right here is the first deck that my daughter opened. And so this is one that she has an attachment to. It is my deck. I didn't buy it for her. I brought her with me and I bought it, but she is going to get it. Eventually it's going to be given to her over Christmas. So she doesn't know that yet, but it will become hers. And she really has an emotional attachment to this deck. She wants this deck. Like whenever she wants to play, this is the deck she wants to play. She doesn't care how many decks I have. She doesn't care about all. This is the one, because in her mind, this one's hers, because I let her open it. And so she is going to get it. I am going to give it to her because I see that attachment and I see how much she wants this deck. And so it's a very interesting deck, has some great cards, and it really is, it's a fun one to play. I've played it, and I can see why she likes it so much. It is the only deck I have that has, what's it called, Epic Quest in it. So, you know, but she doesn't understand the you know, what all the cards are. I mean, I shouldn't say that. She knows what the cards are. She knows what they do. She knows how to play this deck. And I think that's part of the reason she's attached to it. She's played it a bunch of times. She opened it. She feels a kind of attachment to this deck. And I haven't seen her have this attachment to other card games and stuff. And so I've kind of noticed that. And I've also noticed this with other people who've opened these things, who seem to be more drawn to this than they are to, you know, say Pokemon. My daughter enjoyed opening Pokemon, but she would open, you know, pack after pack after pack, you know, when I'd get them for her. And she was really just looking for a card. And that's a different experience. That's a different experience than opening a deck and then looking at the whole deck. When you're searching for a card, or you're hoping to find a cool card, that's it's different. It's for people who haven't done both, it's hard to kind of explain. There is not a single Keyforge deck that I have opened that I don't feel like I had an enjoyable time opening it. Now, there are some decks I've opened that I don't feel are very good. That is true. But I haven't opened any Keyforge decks and just been like, wow, that sucked. You know, why, you know, that was kind of a, I don't know. It's, and I'm sure there are people that feel that way. I'm sure there's people that open some of these decks and they go, God, that's a terrible deck. I felt that way about some of my decks, but then I've played them and then been like, you know, it's an average deck. And so, the decks that I guess I used to think were bad, have turned out to be just kind of average. I mean, they're on the low end of the average, but they can win a game. Now, they wouldn't win a game against some of my really powerful decks. That's true. But overall, they're good decks. And so I think, just generally speaking, you know, there's just, I don't know, there's an interesting feeling when it comes to opening these decks that I've noticed that kids get, and even that I've gotten, that I've enjoyed. You know, it reminds me of, I love this card, by the way. It reminds me of an old feeling. You know, it's like, it reminds me of an old feeling that I had. And even with all the decks I've opened, I still want to open more. You know, maybe that's an addiction. I don't know. I don't believe, you know, that's the reason I'm wanting to. I'm wanting to because I enjoy it. It's not super expensive. I could open an entire pack of decks, you know, 12 decks, and it's going to cost me about the same amount as a Modern Magic set. If I compare it to Ultimate Masters, which is just a, you know, a series of reprinted cards, I'm not seeing anything new if I open one of those. So, you know, maybe I might see some cool, powerful rares, but they're just reprints. And I'm not interested in cards that are reprints. I used to be an old-time collector. You know, I used to collect everything. Cards, comic books, baseball cards, you know, everything. And so I don't really like reprints. Reprints to me have no value. From a collector's standpoint, you know, when Magic the Gathering loses its steam, because all games at some point will, there is no game that's going to survive indefinitely. That's just a reality. All games will die at some point. And when it does, anything that was a reprint will have a value of essentially zero. It will be so low in value that it won't matter. And so that's the whole reason I've shied away from it. And then add the quality issues, and you know, and then a game like Keyforge comes out, you know, and the quality's good. I'm not going to say it's perfect because I don't believe it is, but it's good. It's good quality cards. The graphics are nice. I like the artwork. I think it's its own style. It's a good style. I like the lore. I'm enjoying the way that they're doing it. I don't care much for some of the rulings so far. I do not like the way that they ruled on the Biomatrix backup. I think that they should have ruled in the way that the intent of the card was, and they should have just errated the card, and they should have said it doesn't mean May anymore. Or I guess they should say, they should have ruled in the sense that they should have said that it now means, you know, the owner. They should have just kind of errated that, and then reprinted it, you know, changed the print for any future cards that were printed off that have the correct printing. So I don't like that happened. But other than that, I think that that's really the only ruling they've made that I'm really kind of disappointed in. Now, Fantasy Flight's a company. They're there to make money. They're going to make mistakes. I fully expect that. I hope they do a good job managing this game. I would be very disappointed if they didn't, because I think it's a fantastic game. I love the mechanics. I think the mechanics in this game are really good. Every turn is a thinking turn, as far as I can tell. There's not a turn where, and I mean, I guess there are certain cards that can reduce your options for, you know, your own way of thinking about things. Your opponent's position is going to reduce your options. You know, are they about ready to forge a key? But you have to think in this game, and I think every turn you have to think. I don't think that you know, it's not like a lot of the card games where you draw a card. You get a card. I think the difference in the drawing, it really makes a gigantic difference in the game. And I think the difference in the way that you declare a house versus how much mana or energy or whatever, I think that also makes a gigantic difference in the game. I think the mechanics of this game are just really something of their own. I think that I really think that this game is going to spawn a lot of clones like Magic did. I think there's going to be a lot of spin-offs from this game that are going to take these mechanics, because the mechanics are really good. The mechanics are going to be implemented in many other games. I would not even be surprised if you find people trying to find a way to move these mechanics into a game like Magic. And I know some people are going to be mad at me for saying that, but I would not be surprised. Now, I don't think you can do it. I don't think Magic is designed for these kind of mechanics. I think that I do think this solves a lot of the problems that you do have with Magic. It solves net decking, at least for the most part. You are still going to have people going out and finding out what's in the meta when we do know what's in the meta. I think people will go out and they will look for the decks that are the closest to the decks that they know are powerful. And it doesn't mean that those decks are going to be powerful. It just means that they're close. It means that they have similar cards. Those decks may not be very good. And I think the meta in this game is going to contain a much larger set than people expect. So, for example, if you have a deck that is really good at forging keys outside of your turn, and it's really good, generates a ton of amber, has 2 or 3 of the different cards that can do so, and you can draw into it pretty easily, and that becomes a really popular deck type. Well, another really popular deck type that is going to go along with that is a deck type that is going to make your keys more expensive. That's just going to be part of the natural progression. If everybody's using decks that allow forging outside your turn, everybody is then going to want cards that make those keys cost more. And there are, Brobnar has probably one of the best, Brobnar and Disc probably have 2 of the best ways of doing it. So there's just so many different things that will make some decks really powerful. And I do think making keys cost more is going to be in the meta. I think it's going to be important. I do think forging outside the step is going to be important. I think library access is going to be important. Well, I shouldn't say library access, archive is going to be important. I think card draw will be important. I think cards that shut your opponent down will be important. But the odds that you'll find all of those in a single deck that then contains good cards is approaches 0, statistically speaking. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Just the odds. If you run the odds that it's going to be there is really, 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 really low. Because every time you ask for another thing in a deck, you lower the number of decks that can meet that criteria. And so I think there's going to be a lot of compromises inside of people's decks, which I really like the idea of. No deck is going to be perfect. It's going to lack something somewhere. It's going to lack key cost. It's going to lack key charging. It's going to lack archiving. It's going to lack something in that meta. It's going to lack something. And I think that's something that is really, really good in Keyforge, and it's something I hope they don't. I hope they don't in future sets remove that. I actually want to see that decks always have some kind of lacking section where you don't have 100% of everything you want, but you have a good chunk of it. And you can find those decks, and you have to buy quite a few decks to get a deck that really meets a lot of those criteria. You have to buy a sizable number of decks to meet the criteria of even, say, for example, archive, key forging, and board wipe. And so every time you add to that criteria, I have like 2 decks that meet that criteria, that have all those in good power. And then I have other decks that, have it in lesser power. But those aren't even necessarily my strongest decks, because I also have decks that, take advantage of the fact that somebody is going to, say, clear the board, or is going to have a bigger creature pool than me. And so you're going to find some very interesting decks, I think, when people really start playing this in a competitive style, where you wouldn't find it in other games. Now, the question that we still end up with is, are there going to be broken decks? Maybe. I have to say maybe. They may exist, and I don't know exactly how that's going to be dealt with, but I'm sure it will be dealt with, just because of the just because they know, I think they know just as well as anybody else that those decks can exist. There may be one or two of them running around that are just in some way completely broken. And I don't know if we know the combinations, very unlikely. I'm sure if I sat down, put all my cards together and said, how can I break this? Well, yeah, of course I can. That wouldn't be very hard, Drop 4 library accesses in the same deck with 4 phase shifts and then 4 battle fleets, and I would draw my entire hand pretty much from the start of the game. My whole deck would be drawn. And so, yeah, that would break the game. But the odds that that even exists is kind of, basically I highly doubt it. I highly, highly, highly doubt it. That would be, just something that you're not going to find. So what really will break the game, now, of course, I just mentioned what I think is one of the insanely powerful combinations, which would be Logos and Mars, having Battle Fleet, Library Access, and Phase Shift. If you have those 3 cards in your hand, you can draw a tremendous amount of cards if you have a combination of Mars and Logos in your hand, and potentially have just a gigantic hand. Now add Archive into that situation and the card draw could be insane. So I do think that there are ways that you will kind of see somewhat broken combinations, and some of them may or may not come off, depending. I don't know. This is just another deck right here from pre-release. I don't remember. I believe this was also opened by my daughter, but this was not her first deck. This was opened later. I'm trying to remember. Yes, yeah. This deck was opened by my other daughter, and this was her first deck. Although she needs help reading the cards because she's just not old enough. She's a younger kid. She's still in the single digits. She can read the cards, but she needs a little bit of help mechanically and stuff like that in the game. She still has fun with it, but I think overall she needs to get a little bit older before she really kind of takes to a game like this. But still a very interesting deck. All these decks really are interesting. Like I said, I don't have a lot of decks where I don't go, oh, that's I kind of like some of these things in here. Now I do have some that I'm just kind of like, well, I don't know. I could give this deck away. Now I probably will at some point. I actually plan to give them away to one of my local schools here, to some of the kids who don't have access to them. I live in a very, very small community. There's very few people here who have access to these cards. They don't sell anywhere near me at all. There's not a single shop available in this entire area that sells Keyforge. The nearest shop is a 2-hour drive. So you're not going to get them here. There really is nowhere to purchase these. And so the only way anybody here is going to see these cards until the game really takes off is by being given a deck or being able to play with them from somebody else's collection, or they buy them online. But most younger kids aren't going to buy these. Now I think I want to get these in the hands of teenagers, generally speaking, because I think they're the ones that this game is really going to draw in more so. I think a lot of the teen kids are looking for, well, I mean, a lot of them play video games and stuff, and they find all these games online. I don't know how much interaction they're going to do with card games and stuff, but I do believe that it'll be significant still. So it is something I'd like to get into, you know, the hands of some of these younger kids. And, you know, I don't see any reason not to give away some of the decks I don't have much of an attachment to. Although I am mildly attached to all my decks, they're like I said, there are ones that I could part with, and I probably will at some point. Just because I can only play so many. I can't play with 42 decks. Trust me, it's really hard to play 42 decks. If I played a different deck every single day, it still takes me a month and a half to go through all my decks. So it's unlikely that I'm going to need all these decks, and I still am going to be opening more. And so the idea of giving them away, I guess I could sell them online, but that's not really my personality. I'm not in it to make money. I'm more in it to introduce people to games. I want people to enjoy games. I think that's what games are about. I think these kind of games are good for people to learn healthy competition and just healthy cooperation to play games together. And so at some point I will probably be doing that. Excuse me. So, but yeah, I think overall, I think this is a fantastic game. I think that, you know, a lot of people are going to enjoy this game. I think a lot of people already do. I think that I really hope that we don't get too many investors trying to jump into this and just buy stuff up. I think that would overall be detrimental, because it would reduce the supply for new players. And I don't really like the what I see going on with the secondary market online. I don't like seeing, you know, decks going for $200-300. I think that is it's not that I don't think that can be good in the long run. I think right now, I think it's just it has a very high chance of giving people bad feels. You buy a deck online for $200, and then you take it to go play with it, and you find out it wasn't really near as good as you thought it was. That's not going to leave you with a good feeling about the game. You're going to feel bad about the game, even though it wasn't the game's fault that you paid $200 to buy a deck online. It's your fault that you paid $200 to buy a deck online, but you're going to end up blaming it on the game. And I think that is an unfortunate scenario with people buying these decks online and way overpaying. As of right now, I would not pay more than $10 for a deck of these cards. We just don't know. And you can open the most powerful deck of cards that exists for $10. You don't know until you open it. You know, nobody knows what's in that pack until the day you open it. And so the most powerful deck of cards may not even be opened for 10 years. Like, we don't know. Like, the most powerful Call of the Archon deck may remain in a sealed box for years to come. And so going online and buying these decks for absorbent amounts is, to me, it's not good for the game. And the game is about enjoyment and fun. Now, paying $10-15 for a deck, that's cool. You know, $20 even, you know, I can understand that. You know, even if you burn a little bit of money, I get that. But spending huge amounts of money on something you don't know whether it's good in the meta or not, and you're just guessing, it's a slippery slope, because you might just be wasting a bunch. Now, you may have made a good decision. Maybe it is the best deck ever, and you paid $120 for it because nobody knew it. And if you're that good at evaluating games, then fantastic. But I don't think so. I just, generally speaking, I think most people are not, are not that good at evaluating games. When I play games, I evaluate the ever-loving out of them for days and days on end. I dwell on the game and I think about the combinations and the cards and the the board and how things are laid out and what people can do and what kind of states there are, and it's part of what I do. And I think that people think they can evaluate this game and know the answer before we really have a large enough pool and set and have seen any serious competition between the really, good players, because good players are going to make a difference, and good sets, good decks. And both of those, I believe, are true. And you're going to need both at the same time to really evaluate the overall strength of the decks. And some of these decks are going to be much harder to pull off, because making the right card decision in this game, calling the right house on any given turn, can make a huge difference in the game. Did you board wipe too soon? Did you amber stop too soon? Did you play your creatures down when it was a bad idea? When your opponent was preparing for a board wipe. There's just so many scenarios that we're not good enough at this game. I don't think anybody is. I think there are people that have gotten decent. You can play online in many different places and environments. But I think overall we don't understand enough about this game to really warrant spending more than $10, in my opinion. Now, I know some people are going to disagree with me, and they're going to be like, oh, well, I know a good deck when I see it. Well, I thought that, and I've thought that many a times, where I would look at a deck and be like, the deck list, I know that's a good deck. And then I open it, I really kind of lay the cards out, and I look at it and I go, oh, it wasn't as good as I thought. Or I look at a deck and I go, oh, that's not a very good deck. And then I open it, I lay out the cards and I go, wow, there's a lot of synergy in this deck. All the cards play well together. The cards themselves individually don't mean much until you start comparing them to the rest of the cards that they're paired with. Now, of course, you could look at a deck list, print out all the cards, or load them all up on your computer screen and compare them that way. But until you can move them around and look at them and kind of pair them up and say, oh, well, this can do this and that can do this, and until you can do that, you really don't have a good concept of what the deck is. And now, like I said, there's ways to do it digitally, and so that is possible. But overall, I think that our ability to evaluate these decks is still very limited. And I'll even say my ability to evaluate these decks is still limited. I have a good grasp of the houses and the way the cards play and the combinations that are available when I look at a deck. But it's still possible I'm missing things. It's still possible there's things that I'm not grasping. Anything is still possible, and so I have to, and this is why I caution everybody, as somebody who is really good at evaluating games, something I've done my entire life, and I'm really good at evaluating them and winning at games, because I can see the outcome most of the time when I'm playing these games. So I know kind of when to play when's a good idea, when's not a good idea, what kind of combinations will work, what kind of combinations won't work. I just don't think any of us really understand to the extent that we should, when it comes to what decks we should go buy, what decks we shouldn't buy. And I think we will over time. Matter of fact, it reminds me of a program that I looked into recently. Oops, ADHD is on. It's a program, you know, and you can run the evaluation on these decks, and it will tell you things about the deck. You know, like qualities that it feels the deck has. The problem with the program, and so here, hold on, I'll leave this here for a second. Well, I find one, because I pulled out the decks that it said, oh, these are great decks. And it did pick some decent decks. A couple of the decks it picked were actually pretty good. Some of them are among better decks. But there was a deck it picked, as far as like the way it evaluated the deck. And like I said, I think overall it does a halfway decent job of evaluating these decks. But it does not say like how many amber stopping abilities a deck has. Now it does have amber control as a function, but certain amber control is better than others. Stealing is better than capturing. Destruction is better than capturing. Just generally speaking, because capturing, you can always get the amber back. Now, I would say overall it does a good job evaluating decks. For people who just have no idea how to evaluate the decks, it's a decent program. You can find it on Discord. Join the Keyforge Discord channel, and you can have it evaluate your decks using one of the channels on there. And every deck it picked, you know, that it said was pretty good, was okay. So let's pull this off to the side, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is not a pre-release deck. This is I believe I've already evaluated this deck. I don't know. I can't remember if I did or not. But here is a deck that it evaluated, right, and said was a really good deck. You know, according to its parameters, its metrics, right? And so, and I'm just going to show it because, you know, I just want to give an example of what it says. Now, this is according to its parameters. This is in the top 4 of all my decks. Now, I don't believe this is. I have reasons why I don't believe this is, but I don't feel that this is one of my top 4 decks. Part of the problem with the program, I think, is it doesn't evaluate synergy. So now this is not a bad deck. It's got 2 Nocturnal Maneuvers. It's got a Regrowth. It's got an Nepenthe Seed. All very good cards. It's got a Scout, can work really well. It's got a Nature's Call, good card. You know, it's got a Snufflegator, a Marmook, a Niffleape, a Hunting Witch, 2 Hunting Witches, 3 Hunting Witches, right? It's great amber generation right there. It is a good deck, you know, like I said, and it is in my in the category of better decks, I would say. So it's got a Bait and Switch, it's got a Booby Trap, it's got a Hidden Stash, so it's got some archive in there. It's got a Poison Wave, Evasion Sigil, Seeker Needle. It's got 2 of those. It's got a Bad Penny, right? Got a Makus Asp, got a Nexus, Naughty the Thief, Old Bruno, Orbital Bombardment, got a Squawker, Grabber Jammer, John Smith, Tunk, Megamouth, Think Drone, Dominator, Biomatrix Backup, and Jammer Pack. So it's not a terrible deck. It's got good cards. So I'm not saying it's not a good deck. But the thing is, the bigger problem, you know, in my opinion, is it is lacking good board clear, and it has limited amber control relative to the amount of amber control I like. It doesn't have any of the key forging abilities. It doesn't, you know, it's lacking. It's a well-balanced deck. I think that's the way to put it. It is a well-balanced deck, and So it's not that the program can't pick out a well-balanced deck. It can pick out a well-balanced deck quite well. But that is not, you know, and I've played with that deck. It's not a bad deck. But I've got other decks that can beat that deck quite a bit. And so it's like I said, it's not that it doesn't give you, it's good for a raw evaluation. And the program states itself, it's not good, it doesn't detect synergy. And so it's not going to tell you about synergies. And so if the deck doesn't have really good synergies or things like that, all these decks basically, the ones that I pulled out were, they didn't have any negative ratings. Which means that they basically were just well balanced across the board. And now there's other decks that rated really, really high in certain categories, and those are decks that I prefer, even though they have negative ratings in other areas. So it is an interesting program. I would, if you just kind of want to have an idea of how do I feel about this deck, you know, give me just a raw evaluation of its amber generation potential, you know, that kind of stuff. It's not a bad program. So, excuse me. So I have, now these are my 3 other pre-release decks. I'm just going to make room for them. And these are all the ones that I picked up. I picked up 6 total decks when I went to the pre-release. I should check how long this video is. Let's see. Oh yeah, 51 minutes. So these are the other pre-release decks. I will go through them at some future point when I'm kind of rambling on. But I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on Keyforge and where I think it's going. And overall, like I said, I think it's going to be going to a good place. It definitely has challenges to overcome. I think every game does. But I don't think those challenges are going to be a big problem relative to the gameplay and just how I feel about the game and how I think other people feel about the game. It's just a good game overall. It's enjoyable, and opening your own deck is a great experience. And you know, if you get a deck you don't like, I guess it is potential that you'd get a bunch of decks you didn't like all in a row, but I think that would be more, I've watched a bunch of videos, you know, or I think I know which cards I want, and I didn't see them in this deck, so I don't like this deck. I would try not to fall into that trap. I would try to look at the deck and really try to understand what the deck's trying to do. Because these decks really do have their own, they have a design to them from the algorithm that is meant to do a specific thing. It definitely seems like they have kind of this, a flavor to them. You know, like there's decks that are designed for board clear. There's decks that are designed for amber capture. There's decks that are designed to slow your opponent's key forging down. And so you really just kind of have to look at the deck itself and really kind of see what it's trying to do and decide whether you like that play style, because it's really the play style of the deck that you're looking at more so than the did it have, you know, the 2 gateways of disc that I was hoping it would have in it, right? Because the odds you're going to get the cards you're specifically looking for are incredibly low. First you have to get the houses you're looking for, which is 1 in 35, I believe, to get the 3 houses you're hoping. And that's a random chance, so you could have 60 decks and still not have that combination. And then the odds you're going to get the cards that you wanted from those houses when you get those houses. Again, very, very low odds. So thinking about it from the perspective of I really want this specific deck combination, I think is it's going to be really, really hard to get that. So look at the decks you get, see if you enjoy playing them. If you don't, trade them away, give them away. If you don't like the game, well, I mean, sell the decks online. They're still worth a decent amount of money if you do. You know, so if you don't like it, there's ways to get rid of them. If you do like it, and you want more, get more, and if not, well, you know. But other than that, you know, have fun. Play the games that you enjoy. If you don't enjoy the game, there's no reason to play it. I wouldn't suggest collecting anything you don't enjoy playing. I would definitely suggest go after what you like. Make sure you have fun. And so that's really all I have to say, and you guys have a great night.